Good morning. You might be afternoon where you are. I don't know. It's morning where I am. So welcome to this episode, which we are now, I'm just going to look at my notes. We are now on episode 37. I can't actually keep up with it. When I started this podcast, I thought I'd probably do 10 and then stop. And it's just going and going and going. And I'm loving it. So I am Kim. You can find me over on Instagram at Kim's Wellness Space. If you are brand new to this podcast, I highly encourage you to go back and listen to the other ones. I have had some fabulous guests this year, and every episode shares so much information. There's so much you can get out of it. So yeah, highly recommend you do that. Thank you for listening today. So when I was writing my notes for today's podcast, it occurred to me just how many coaches I've spoken to. And it's just amazing. I think probably the majority of my guests have been coaches, but we each come from a slightly different area, or we have a slightly different experience or different background. And that's why it's so important to have all of us as coaches, because we all offer something different. And even if you hear something that you already know, everybody puts words together in a slightly different way, as we discussed in a podcast last week. And so it hits differently. So I love that I can talk to all these different coaches. So with that said, I'm going to invite Jen into the studio, and Jen is a wellness coach. Welcome, Jen.
Hello.
So pleased to be able to talk to you this morning.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So I think, as I was just saying there, like the majority of people that I've talked to this year have been coaches, but every single coach is completely different. So I just thought I would start off by asking you something that actually wasn't on our chat when I gave you the questions that I'd probably be talking to you about, sneaked an extra one in. But why do you call yourself a wellness coach? I thought that was a good place to start.
Because everything that I do is based around everything that affects your well-being. So from the food that you eat, to the water you drink, to getting out in nature, to your career, to your finances, your purpose, it's just absolutely everything. There's these like 12 elements that affect our overall well-being. And what I didn't realize, that when I was going through my story, which I know we're coming on to, I actually kind of, in my own way, muddled my way through quite a lot of these elements in trying to find ways to overcome the challenges I was having. And that just made me realize how powerful it is and how much we can do to help ourselves with many different challenges, not just mine, but people have all different ones, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Taking that approach to your well-being, it's just a really powerful thing, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. And I love that. And when I first started coaching, I was a wellness coach, and I've kind of changed my title, but actually, I'm the same as you. Like, there's layers to it, and you can't just focus on one thing. You have to look at the whole picture, don't you? And I think that's why it's great there's so many of us, because we all have expertise in different areas, but it all comes down to feeling well. And the word wellness has kind of been marketed and PR'd and chucked around so much that sometimes it can get weakened, I think. So it's nice that there's all of us out there reinforcing that we can feel well.
Yeah, I think as well, what you just said there, that's one of the things I found most interesting, was how all these different things are interlinked, and how one thing which you don't think's really connected can have like such a massive impact on something else. And if you address that, it has this like domino effect, doesn't it, of helping with other areas. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember one of the first ladies that I was coaching when I very first qualified, and she wanted to lose weight. And so we were having a conversation about her sleep, and she was like, surely you want to talk to me about my food? And I was like, yeah, but if you're not sleeping, it's going to affect everything. So let's start on that. And she was like, people don't always connect the dots, do they?
No, they definitely don't. No. I know I didn't personally, so.
No, exactly. I don't think I did to begin with. It's just a learning, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how long have you been a wellness coach?
Since November last year, so 12 months now.
Okay. Oh, exactly the same as me.
I qualified last November, so yeah.
Fabulous.
Just that you've asked me that, I've realised it has been a whole year.
Yeah, amazing. That's so good. Have a little celebration for that. That's so good.
I think I
will. And so just looking at my notes to make sure that I don't lose my direction. What brought you to being a wellness coach? So why did you decide to qualify in this?
So this comes about from my own story, really, and it's a really very long one. So I'll try and kind of narrow it down to as brief as I can. But basically,
Okay.
I struggled with chronic stress for over a decade, and that was originally triggered by my job.
Okay.
I was signed off work long term with stress, anxiety, and depression.
Okay.
Twice. Because silly me, I went back the first time thinking I could sort it out, but it didn't quite work out like that.
Yeah.
And then, so basically, I knew that I needed to get out of there. I knew I needed to have a new direction because it was really affecting my well-being.
Yeah.
So I had a complete career change. I trained as a personal trainer. I got a job in this rehabilitation gym, which was really great, working with lots of older people with different chronic health conditions. There was no stress in that job. It was a really great job. But all I would say was that there was like this undercurrent, because I'd been in this situation of having this stress, but I hadn't really, in hindsight, I realised now I hadn't dealt with it. I just moved on to something else, thinking everything would be okay. So everything kind of was better, but I could only describe it as it was always there, and it would just take the slightest thing to like tip me over the edge.
Yeah.
And I kind of just went on like that for years, because I just thought, well, that's just the way it is. Just get on with it, kind of thing. So I just got on with it. A few more life challenges like thrown in the mix along the way. And then in November 2019, I thought to myself, if I was working for someone else, by this time I'd started my own business, by the way. After having my baby, I decided to start up my own business.
Yeah.
So November 2019, I thought to myself, if I was employed now, I would be going to the doctor and being asked to be signed off with stress, because I recognised all the symptoms had come back really strongly. But of course, you're self-employed, so you can't really do that, can you?
No, exactly.
So I just plodded on again a bit longer. And it was when COVID hit, actually. I looked at my husband. I couldn't run my fitness classes, and I just looked at my husband and I said, thank goodness somebody has given me permission to stop. And actually just saying that out loud and realizing that I no longer had to be at work and doing, I just hit the wall like big style. And I don't think I came around till about September.
Wow.
So it was like 5+ months. And it was at that point that I promised myself that I was never, ever, ever going to allow that to happen to me again. Because now I had like my 4-year-old son, and it was massively impacting my relationship with him. And I was just like, what am I doing? Like, what is this about? So I took lots of really positive steps. I did more self-care. All the things over the years that people tell you to try, but you're like, yeah, I'll get around to that. I
haven't got time for that.
Haven't got time for that. And also, I was so stressed at one point. I was so wound up that I couldn't relax. I remember trying to do yoga and all these other things, and I just couldn't. I can't find words for it. I just couldn't do it. I was just so uptight. So I started lots of self-care. I put lots of boundaries in place at home. Business boundaries was a big one, because that used to really overlap into my personal life. And things did get better. Like I felt an improvement, and I thought, I should have maybe done a few of these things sooner, but you live and learn, don't you?
Absolutely.
And then, yes, it was better, but something still wasn't right. And I find it really hard to put into words. I wasn't content. I wasn't happy. And I was really struggling with my thoughts and a racing mind and negative self-talk and really confusing thoughts about what I should do. I didn't know whether to continue with my business. I didn't know what to do about this, what to do about that. And I was just really, really unsettled and unhappy. And I thought, I need more help. Like, I've done everything I personally can.
Yes.
But I felt like there's still something big there that needed to be addressed. So I worked with a coach myself. She was more of a mindset coach, interestingly. And I started working with her, and I'd only been working with her for a few weeks. And I'm not making this story up. I was sat on the sofa one night. My dog was sitting next to me. I was on my own, and I just suddenly went, oh, I know what I could do. I could train to be a coach, and I could help other women so they don't have to suffer for all the years like I did. And it literally just came out of nowhere, because I'd managed to do some work with this coach where for the first time in years, I could actually think straight. Like my
Yeah.
mind was clear.
Oh, it's
And
amazing.
it came to me. So I was like, is there such a thing as wellness coaches? So I Google, I Googled it and I was like, oh, yes, there is.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it started, really. And I had that moment of yes, and then I had the moment, oh, don't be silly, you can't do that. Who are you trying to kid? But then, because I felt like I'd only been working with her a few weeks, I thought, how can I possibly have had this, from how I felt literally at the beginning of January to like that time in the beginning of March, it was unbelievable, really. So I went for it. I wrapped up my old business. I told everybody I was finishing, and I signed up to trying to be a certified wellness coach. And
Amazing.
that was it. I spent last year doing that, and I qualified in November.
Oh, that's fabulous.
So that's my mission now. I just really don't want other women to suffer like I did, because I suffer sounds a bit maybe dramatic, but when I look back, that was a lot of years of not understanding what stress meant, not understanding the long-term implications, and not really knowing that it wasn't normal and there was something that I could do about it. But when it got to the point I wanted to do something, I didn't know what to do.
Yeah,
And I would like to
absolutely.
help other women in that situation kind of get there quicker than I did.
And it ripples out, doesn't it? So as much as you were overwhelmed and you were trying to find your way out, you know, it does ripple out to the people around us. And so, you know, it's important for everybody, isn't it, that we can kind of bring ourselves back to us, really, and kind of try and get rid of this overwhelm.
Definitely. And when I started doing the training, that, like I said at the start, there was all these 12 elements of wellness, and within that there was quite a lot of different layers, as you know, in each area. And as I was working through all of those, it was everything I'd kind of been through in my own way. I'd muddled through it, but I had this light bulb moment, that impact of that stressful job, when I could see how it impacted like my rest, what I ate, my purpose, my finances. It was just, I was like, wow, this all makes sense now. And then I realized from the coach I'd been working with, although I'd muddled my way through all that, the missing piece of my puzzle was mindset.
Right.
And that was the key thing for me last year. And that was what we worked on a lot. So it all kind of just came together. It was quite magical, really.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? When you have that light bulb all of a sudden, like, oh, okay, this is where I need to go now, or this is starting to work. Or so, like, for me, my journey started with yoga. And it was really interesting to hear you say that you tried yoga and you couldn't do it because it was but yoga gives us space to feel. And when you're that overwhelmed and that stressed, you don't want to actually feel anything, do you? So it's quite a good indication of just how you were in your body.
Yeah, when I look back now, because I do yoga every day now, and I wouldn't go without it. But at the time, I remember going to this class and I was just like, oh, I cannot be on with this. I couldn't switch off. I was just a bit jittery, a bit kind of, I was so stressed all the time. It was impossible.
Yeah. And like you say, we think it's normal, don't we? We think, oh, well, you know, everyone's like that. We'll just put it over there and we'll get on and it'll get better. And actually, you know, we're not doing ourselves any favors, are we?
No, in hindsight, I definitely realise that now.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I can see, I had a little bit of a look on your Instagram to see what your content was, because obviously we don't really know each other that well. We haven't really connected that long ago. And I can see that all of your coaching things that you're sharing is really coming from that place of if you're stressed or overwhelmed, like how to take that first step. So if anyone is listening and they're kind of like, oh, this sounds really familiar, maybe I am stressed and I need to start, what is that one sort of first step that they could do to help themselves? What would you advise them to do?
So I really struggle with the one step thing. The first thing I would say is don't ignore it. So educate. I know I haven't really spoken about what my symptoms were, and they're very different for a lot of people, but there's some great resources out there. And I actually realized I was stressed when I knew something was wrong for a really long time.
Yeah.
And I actually read a magazine article. There was like a 2-page spread on stress, and there was a box with all these symptoms in. And I was like, oh, I've got that. And I had them all. So I was practically celebrating. I remember being in my house saying, oh, I'm just stressed. You know, 'cause I thought I had some kind of major illness or something.
Yeah.
And like in hindsight now, like fancy just saying I was just stressed. Like if I really understood the implications on me long term, like physically, mentally, emotionally, I never would have celebrated just being stressed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would say don't ignore it. If something doesn't feel right, definitely educate yourself on the symptoms of stress. Don't just then be like me and say, well, I'm just stressed.
Yeah.
It needs to be addressed because it doesn't just go away. And I've learned, like, I moved from one job to another. I moved from this to that, constantly trying to get away from it. It doesn't just go away. It has to be addressed. So around that, I would say, like, creating awareness, just being aware of how you feel, what things make you feel certain ways, and just taking a moment to stop. I mean, a really powerful exercise you can do is actually just stop and write down absolutely everything that you're doing every single day of the week, like everything.
Right. Okay.
Because often when you write stuff down, well, not often, for me, all the time, when you write stuff down and see it on paper, it becomes something quite different to when it's in your head.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just seeing on paper everything that you're doing, one, you can possibly then say, oh, wow, that's why I feel so stressed and overwhelmed. Two, you can give yourself a pat on the back and maybe congratulate yourself for coping with all that for so long.
Yes.
And then the third thing that you really need to do is question, like, why are you doing it? Do you need to be doing it? Can someone else do it? Or can you just let it go? Because I'm yet to meet somebody that hasn't done that exercise and hasn't gone, why am I doing that? Because we just pick stuff up along the way, don't we? We just start doing things because it's easier to do it than ask someone else, or it's expected of us. And then before we know, we're doing so much that we're completely stressed and overwhelmed with everything that we've got to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's double back then. If people are listening, and what are some of the symptoms of stress that they might be suffering that they haven't realised actually that's a stress thing?
Yeah, so for me, and what's interesting, it's like an accumulation. It's not suddenly you've got this thing and you stress. For me, it was this build-up of different symptoms that suddenly became something bigger. So things like feeling more irritable and anxious, not being able to concentrate, not being able to make decisions. You might start getting like muscular aches and pains, headaches.
Right.
I had a headache every day for 2 years, which I now know were tension headaches, but I just kept thinking it'll go away, but it never did.
Yeah.
Problems with digestion, like getting constipation, diarrhea, just any kind of digestive problems.
Yeah.
And just feeling like that, it's like that overwhelmed feeling, isn't it? Like you're not coping particularly well. You might feel more tearful, more emotional, just like everything's a little bit too much. But I mean, that's just some of them. There's a really, really big long list. Mine's a really good resource actually for the symptoms, because they break it down into how it makes you feel, how it makes you behave, and like physical symptoms.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's a really interesting resource just for people to go, oh, yeah. Because then when you start seeing them listed, you start to piece together that it is an accumulation of all those things that, could be down to being too stressed.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's quite interesting, isn't it? It's almost like our body's shouting at us saying, well, we've been doing this for ages and you're not noticing. So now I'm going to give you a headache, and now I'm going to upset your stomach, and now I'm going to make your joints hurt. And why are you not listening? And actually, with all of our wellness, whatever bit it is, sleep or food or exercise or whatever, it's all about being really super aware of what your body's doing and what it likes and what it doesn't like. And we're so quick to ignore it, aren't we?
Of course it is. That I always say to people, just be aware, like, about everything.
Yeah.
And I will just say that all those signs, if you do ignore them, what happens is that your body just then says, right, I've had enough. And I've experienced this twice. The first time was worse than the second. And for me, I would be at work and people would be speaking to me, and I could see their mouths move, but I couldn't tell you anything they'd said, because I just completely shut down. And my doctor actually said, you just can't physically and mentally take anymore, and everything's just kind of shutting down. And that's basically what happens. And then you hit that full burnout where you just can't physically, mentally take anything else, and you just crash big style.
And that's frightening.
It very much is. And it's hard to get out of that place. It takes a really long time. And I would love to help people before they get there. But I also often realize that people ask for help usually when the really painful things happened already. Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it? It's really, really interesting. So I've actually written down here, what do you love about coaching? But actually, I can see from talking to you that it's being able to almost stop and redirect, isn't it? So I find I get the most joy when I'm talking to a client and they go, "Oh my God, this happened today, and I get it now." And you're like, "Yes." And it's the same thing, isn't it?
You've hit the nail on the head. It's being able to ask people the right questions to challenge what they're thinking and what they're doing.
Yeah.
And for them, you can see them almost scratching the head as the penny drops.
Yes.
And just, it's the fact, it's when they go away and they put that thing into action that they've decided to do, and the result that they get from that, and then they share that with you, and you can feel their energy and their excitement. And it's often the smallest thing. This is the other thing for people.
Yeah.
It's not about doing something really, really grand. It's about doing something small.
Yes.
And then doing that, and you get the impact and the effect of doing that, and then you do that till it becomes a habit, and then you do it without thinking about it, and then you add the next small thing.
Yeah.
And you just keep going like that, and then before you know it, you've built up all these little habits and you've done all these small steps, and you've changed all these small things, but then it's not small anymore, it's huge, isn't it? Because it's had a massive impact on you as a person and the people around you as well. So
yeah, absolutely. And that's so true what you said about it's the small things. Like I think maybe it's a society that we're in, but we're so, I don't know, can't think what the word is that I want to use, but it's so ingrained in us that we need to do big grand things, and we're going to have really quick results, and everything should be and actually for most of things to do with our wellness, it's those little tiny tweaks that we can make consistently that we don't have, you hardly notice you're doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which I guess is why we get there as well, isn't it? It's those little things that we do consistently that sort of take us down.
Yeah, and then it becomes a habit, and then quite often, depending what thing it is we're talking about, but say like it's something that you do, whether you're doing a yoga every day or getting I have a cold shower every morning. I don't go without one now. I crave, a meditation. Meditation. If you said to me years ago I was going to meditate, I'd have laughed in your face. Like, seriously, I don't have time for meditation. But now I crave it because I'm so into it now. I zone out so much. I crave it.
Yeah.
That's become a habit, whereas something I never used to be able to do. And I don't do these things for long, like a few minutes at a time, but it makes such a big difference.
Oh, it does. Yeah. I think actually it's funny, isn't it? I think meditation is quite underrated. It's a bit like walking. People go, "Oh yeah, I went for a walk." But walking is amazing. Like there's so much good stuff that comes out of going for a walk. And meditation's the same. And I'm like you, go back 10 years, I couldn't meditate. I always said that. No, I can't do that. But actually, I love meditating. I do it every day now. And if I don't do it, I can notice the difference in myself. I am actually a different person for missing it.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah, it's amazing the power these things have.
Walking's my thing as well. It's become a bit of a joke actually. That with some business mentoring that I'm in, it's like, just go for a walk, Jen. You'll get your answer, because when I'm out, everything just comes to me. Your head's just clear, and all the ideas come, and I'm outside all the time. Any excuse to go out, I'm out.
Me too. If I could be outside all the time, I would be.
Yeah, I would be as well.
I know walking's amazing. When I coach people and they're like, "Oh, I haven't really got time, and I can't do this, and I can't go to the gym," and it's like, just walk to the bottom of the road and back. Just start with that, and then build on it. It's fine. Walking is so good for us. It's a complete, I think. So where is the best place for people to find you if they want to come and learn a bit more about what you do, or they want to work with you? Where's the best place?
So you can follow me on Instagram.
Yeah.
And also I do have my website, but to be honest with you, my Instagram, I tend to upload blogs onto there and videos that I do on various different subjects.
Yeah.
Another really great option is to sign up to my newsletter as well, because that's where all the great stuff goes, with all my blog links and the videos that I do to just help people and give them lots of tips and advice they can start to use straight away.
Fabulous. Yeah. Okay, I'll make sure that all of that is in the show notes so that if anyone's listening, they can come and find you. That's really good.
Yeah, that'd be good.
What else would you like to tell us? Like, why you've got this platform and you're able to share? Is there anything else that you'd like to share with people that are listening today?
Yeah, so in terms of stress, I realise that Christmas can be a really stressful time for people,
Yeah.
and it's coming around really quickly, isn't it?
Isn't it?
So I've got a couple of things available. I've got a Christmas planner, which is a completely free guide to help people start planning now, so that the idea being that you get to Christmas and you can be more present, you can enjoy it, you can have some fun, as opposed to that crazy rushing around at last minute and trying to sort of meet everybody's expectations.
Yeah.
And tied in with that, there's a workshop coming up, Stress Less This Christmas, where I'm going to take people through how to overcome their biggest challenges with Christmas and how to put some boundaries in place
Yeah.
and say no and get the Christmas that they want. And I know lots of people in the new year also like to make changes.
Yes.
So I'm going to take people through the first step of my program, because going back to what I said about that creating awareness and writing everything down that you do and looking to see if there's things that you can delegate and let go, I call that creating space. And creating space is huge, because if you want to start taking better care of yourself, if you add that walk or yoga or whatever it is you're going to do to the bottom of that to-do list, it doesn't get done because you never get to it. And then you feel like you failed at something else, and then that has a negative spin on how you feel, and everything just feels worse. So that idea of creating space is to clear that clutter that you don't need in your life, because we've all got it. I don't care what anybody says, we've all got it along the way. So
Absolutely.
that you can free up that time to start focusing on you. And I think that's a really great start for people for the new year.
Yeah. Oh, that all sounds amazing. So we'll make sure that all the links are in the show notes. And then if people want to join you on any of those things and find out more, then they absolutely can. That's fabulous.
Great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for talking to me today. It was super interesting.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I think it's great that us coaches are out there helping people, because we all need somebody like you said, you had a mindset coach. I've had a confidence coach. Like, there's a place for all of us, isn't it? And
there definitely is. And interestingly, all the different coaches you meet, and I know through my training, and you've said yourself from the coaches you've spoken to, it's just so interested, like all the different backgrounds that people are coming from to support people in different ways. There's so much help out there.
Yes.
So many different challenges that you're going through. It's great. It really is.
Yeah, it really is. And we've all had some kind of experience that we want to help others avoid, really. Like, use my experience and shortcut it. Do this instead. Like, don't feel all the pain that I've had. Like, let's do this, and you can move forward a bit quicker. And that's amazing, isn't it?
That's the whole idea, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much for chatting with me today. That's lovely. Okay, I hope everybody really enjoyed listening to today's podcast. I know I certainly did. If you are feeling overwhelmed or stressed, please do go find Jen on Instagram. I'll make sure that all of the information is in the show notes for you. Thank you so much for listening, and I will speak to you all very soon.